Welcome to Reviewable. This week I'm going to be talking about the 1985 film Enemy Mine, starring Louis Gossett Jr. and Dennis Quaid. It's about two guys who are having an argument. Eventually they settle their differences, and the other guy has a tragic accident and ends up raising a son. It's a beautiful love story, a friendship. Stay with me.
Marooned on a desolate planet, he is a soldier, alone with his enemy.
Don't you understand English, toad face? I don't love you and you don't love me. We're stranded here, you understand?
His suspicion will change to tolerance.
You saved my life. Why?
I need to look at another face, even as ugly as yours.
Tolerance will lead to friendship.
We should open up a little place here. I could ruin the food. You could scare away the customers.
And with that friendship will come an overwhelming responsibility.
You must be a parent. Don't kid around, Jerry. You must take my place.
Protecting a life he values more than his own. Dennis Quaid, Louis Gossett Jr., Wolfgang Petersen's Enemy Mine.
So, Enemy Mine was directed by Wolfgang Petersen in 1985. And from what I understand, it was like a troubled production. Like, they hired some other guy to direct this movie, and it was already like $17 million in debt before they fired this dipshit. And they brought in Wolfgang Petersen. And the reason why he even did it was because he said, I want to be able to do whatever I want to do. So he basically started from scratch, didn't use any of the footage that was shot up to that point, and started anew. So there's a couple interesting things I think about this movie when you watch it. One is that you can tell, first of all, that it's distinctly Wolfgang Petersen, especially his early stuff. He did Das Boot, which is a great movie. He also did The Never-Ending Story, great movie. Two totally separate genres, which is crazy. I love directors that can do that. And you can see a little bit of the Never-Ending Story in this from the clouds and stuff in the beginning, especially when they're on the planet in the beginning of the movie. So you'll see some of that influence, or I don't know. I don't remember if Never-Ending Story came before this or after. Maybe he was working on both, but another incredible thing is, for the most part, this movie was shot. Not that it wasn't done on the set. There was definitely stuff done on the set. But to me, some of the locations that were shot, which I believe a lot of it was shot in Germany, to me it looks like a soundstage. It looks like almost everything's on a soundstage, but a lot of it is not on a soundstage, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if it is because of the lighting, or he was just that good at picking places that looked kind of otherworldly, because in my opinion, it does look kind of otherworldly, and maybe it's the lighting or the film processing or whatever. But it just looks like very hard terrain, and the trees look different. Like I said, maybe some of that is movie magic or whatever. This movie now will probably be considered pedestrian, because it's a familiar story, right? They throw two guys together who fucking hate each other, right? And then they gotta work their shit out, and they become friends, and they figure out a way off the planet. Whatever. You believe something, you have to believe the other guy is bad in order for you to be able to kill him. So you have to convince yourself that that's why stereotypes, happen during wars. And if you go back and look at some of the World War II, on both sides, on all sides of the people that were fighting, some of the stereotypes were there to help people do what they're being set out to do, which is kill the enemy. Stereotypes are very helpful for those kinds of things. So, and that definitely plays out in this movie. And I think it's important. And that's one of the things I like about this movie is it does address some of those notions about how we view other people. Almost always we can come together with some kind of common ground. Yeah, I'm not any kind of pacifist or anything like that. Sometimes you do have to settle disputes with violence. That's just a fact of the matter. I don't think it happens. It needs to happen quite as often as we think it does nowadays. That's aside from the point. We're talking about the movie here. You do see a lot of stories like this nowadays. This is, I think, probably the earliest version, if not the only version I remember seeing as a kid, which is why I think it has such a strong influence on me, and also why I think I like it so much. I can tell you one of the reasons why I definitely like it so much is that Louis Gossett Jr. is phenomenal in this movie. His performance and his physical appearance, well, it helps because they do a fantastic job on his makeup. He does, while he is in a human form, his full body makeup in this is incredible, and it ages well, very well in this. In fact, I think nowadays they would probably do some kind of CG crap, and he would just do a voiceover for it, which would be terrible. To me, you'd be able to tell unless they did it as good as like the monkeys they do or the apes in Planet of the Apes, but it's phenomenal, and I think part of the thing that reason why he imbues the alien so much is because he does things like he does this guttural talking thing, and some of his body movements and things like that. Obviously, I think it'd be very freeing to be in a costume like that. And you can basically make your performance wherever you want. Anything that makes it look alien is going to work. Well, not anything, but he does do a great job. He's very alien in this. So the movie starts out, and they kind of narrate the beginning and tell you that humans are starting to explore the galaxy. And as they spread out, they run into this other people that called Drax or whatever. And they say in the movie, what they say is the Drax have squatters' rights or whatever, which seems kind of funny because obviously, if we're just beginning to explore the galaxy, these guys were there before us, so they probably have some kind of claim to these spaces that we would not have. I just find I kind of thought that was interesting. Another a made up reason to fight or hate each other. The Dennis Quaid character, who is his name is Davich in this. I think his name is actually Willis Davich, and then the alien Louis Gossett Jr. is you're gonna be affectionately known as Jerry, but I think his name is actually Jariba. And Jerry, Louis Gossett Jr. ends up shooting one of these spaceships out of the space that they're fighting, and of course the Dennis Quaid character is none too happy about that, so he goes in to attack him to seek vengeance or whatever, and takes it too far. He goes into he ends up shooting his ship or no, yeah, he ends up going to shoot his ship, and then he ends up in the planet atmosphere, and the wreckage from the Jerry's ship ends up disabling his, and thus they are both going to end up on the same alien planet, and what's going to happen there. But they do a lot of things to set up Davidge really hating him, because not only has Jerry shot this other spaceship out of the air that was one of his buddies, but his gunner, whoever he is on Davidge's ship, is also killed in the crash or whatever. And so now he's got another reason. So he had all these other reasons to hate him, and now he's got two more reasons to hate this guy even more. Ultimately, they crash in different spots on the planet. Davidge sees the smoke from his wreckage, and he's going to go get his revenge. So pretty much that's all he's thinking about right now. Even though his ship has just crash landed on some foreign planet, that he's never been on. He makes his way. It's quite a distance. They show a little journey that he goes on. Like I said, it's quite the distance, and he ends up finding him, and he's trying to sneak up on him or whatever. And he's got this little pistol which looks very not futuristic, decidedly not futuristic. It looks like a 38 or something like a. Anyway, they just like painted silver or something like that. And he ends up losing the weapon, and so then he's got to resort to other means by like sneaking up on him while he's going for a swim. And this is one of those locations that like looks really otherworldly, but I guess this is a real place in it's like this pool or it's like this lake and it's green and I don't know if that's maybe they changed the color of it or something like that, but it looks very otherworldly. And Jerry's ship is on the shore. It's like an escape vessel, his ejection pod or whatever. And he sees his weapon, so he goes to take it. And when he goes to try and take it, it's like booby trapped, and it starts zapping the piss out of him. And so Jerry comes up, and now he's got him hostage. So basically, now that the Drac has Davidge as his prisoner, they both start realizing they got to work together. Of course, Davidge is appealing to his. They both. It's gonna be easier to survive with him than without him. There's more to it than that, but he ends up being his little errand boy or whatever, carrying all the shit or whatever, and they gotta worry about shelter and things like that. And so you see them struggle through their problems, but in my opinion, the movie really gets good later on in the movie when they're actually friends, and there's a turning point in the movie where you'll see that they and some of it's done through humor, which I think is a good way to do it. And that doesn't stop their disagreements or anything like that. They continue to disagree even after even after they're friends, like any real friends would disagree. But the part where they still really start being friends and respecting each other, when they both start listening and understanding one another. And the way that happens is Jerry is always reading from this little Talmud. It looks like a little Bible. It's like a tiny necklace around his neck, and he sings out of it. He sings whatever he's singing, in some made up language or whatever. And Davidge asks him about it, and he basically tells him that you have to be able to read the Drac language, and this is their Talmud, this is their religion or whatever, and you can't read it if you don't know Drac, and so Davidge says, hey, teach me some Drac then. And he kind of insults him a little bit or whatever, and then for whatever reason he decides, okay, he actually takes the necklace off and puts it around Davidge's neck and says, I have to give you this, and now you'll become the student, I'm going to become the master, I'm going to teach you, this whatever. It's a great honor for him to bestow this upon him. And he's going to learn the Drac's lineage and all that kind of stuff, his history, and read everything out of the Talmud. And there's one scene that I think is really cool in here where he's learning and so he's reading out of it and he's reading straight out of the little Talmud or whatever, reading about basically and instead of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, when your enemy is a jerk to you, basically turn the other cheek and you should love your enemy and then your enemy will basically turn around and be your friend. It's basically the same as what they're going through, but also it's the same thing that we read in our Western religions or pretty much any religion. They'll have examples of that kind of behavior, and he points that out. And the thing I really like is Jerry's like, yeah, of course, his truth is truth. We all know how we want to be treated. And if somebody's being an asshole to you, nobody wants to be treated that way. Nobody wants to be killed by anybody else. Nobody wants to be assaulted by anybody else. So, the truth is the truth. And it's a good scene. And of course they put them in difficult situations. Like there's this one creature that attacks Davidge early in the movie, and that's one of the turning points too, where Jerry saves his life when he could have just let this thing kill him. And he wouldn't have had to babysit him anymore or anything like that. And again, Davidge showing his and I don't know if at that time in the beginning of the movie, I definitely think Davidge would have, if Jerry was attacked by some kind of monster, he would have just let him get killed. Because Davidge seems like a man who doesn't, his religion in the beginning of this movie is to kill Dracs. That's his belief. His entire belief structure is wrapped around this. I think maybe the Dracs are portrayed as the ones that are being infiltrated, or not infiltrated, but we're encroaching on their territory. They, like I said in the beginning, they were there first, and here we come along, and we're trying to take their land from them or whatever. So, but one of the things that is really bothering Davidge is he hears shit at night, and it really bothers him. And so finally, he gets to a point where he tells Jerry that he's got to go. He's got to go look for something, anything else on the planet that, if there might be people, structures, or anything, he needs to get the hell out of there. He can't stand staying in one spot. He thinks they need to move around because, for one thing, he thinks they're getting at each other. They have a big fight about it, and this is when he comes to. I mean, he's like literally trying to choke Jerry out, and he realizes that he's freaking out on him, and he needs to, you know, behave basically. And you can tell something's up with Jerry because he's physically not able to do the same things, and he's also, you can tell he's kind of emotional about it. A very subtle performance by Louis Gossett Jr. in this regard. You can tell that something's up. And he doesn't have to say anything, but he's doing a good job. So the next thing you see is Davidge going to explore the countryside or whatever, this planet. And they show in kind of a montage, going through. And he ends up finding some garbage and some structures. He finds a futuristic Pepsi can, and then he finds a Drac skull. And he attributes this to some kind of people, like pirates, that basically rape a planet full of its resources, and then they just go to the next place and do the same thing over and over again. So he ends up going back to see Jerry, and he ends up back there, and Jerry explains to him the reason why he couldn't go, and he basically reveals his belly and says, I'm pregnant or whatever. And it's a great scene because Davidge starts laughing his ass off and says, like, don't look at me, man. And you can tell Jerry's a little sensitive about it. So Dracs don't have they have both genders. So they're like a frog or whatever. Like when there's nothing else around and a frog needs to reproduce, it becomes pregnant. I think they make a reference into that in Jurassic Park. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. That's just the way it is. It's necessary for the story to push the story along, and so, and it's perfectly fine as a science fiction movie. So Jerry has both genders. He just when it's time for them to be pregnant and have a baby, it just happens, and so that's what happens to Jerry. He's now pregnant, or it's now pregnant. That's how they refer to him, to the Jerry character, it. And so Jerry's pregnant, and they got to worry about that now, and you can tell he kind of has more, Louis Gossett Jr., I would say, has more of a feminine vibe about him, especially when he starts talking about the child that he's carrying. He's definitely more, I would say, a little bit more feminine, but not I just think it's a good performance. He definitely has more of that, like he's excited, or it's excited. See, I misgendered Jerry there. Jesus. Anyway, the thought police are going to come for me. And he's excited about the pregnancy and all that. And, and anyway, something ends up happening. There's a big old meteor shower, and it destroys their... actually, they get attacked by a monster, and there's a meteor shower. That's one thing I'll say about this movie, that there's some coincidences that don't jive too well with me. I don't like. So there's a monster attack, and then during the... not a monster, it's just like one of the creatures on the planet that has attacked before. And maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's just coincidence, but their home ends up getting destroyed too. Jerry's attacked. Willis Davidge ends up rescuing him, and they have to go in the middle of this huge snowstorm, go find more shelter. And they end up finding this cave, and this is going to be their home for the rest of the movie. But there's also another good scene where for the first time, Jerry wants to know about Davidge's family line, and instead of just Davidge learning about the Drac. Now, that's a huge part of the Drac's existence, I think, is his culture and his heritage. You can tell that Davidge is really kind of touched by that, or he likes that somebody, he's taking an interest in it. He gets to talk about his mom, and he doesn't remember jack shit compared to there's like 300 or 400 lines. They've been memorizing the Dracs. Jerry has his entire family line to like 400 generations, and he can recite it. So anyway, Jerry ends up going into labor, and he knows there's a problem, and so he tells Davidge that when the time comes, you're gonna have to open me up because he ain't gonna make it. So he does indeed die. He has to pull this baby out of him, and but then they flash forward. The baby is like 3 or 4, 5 years old and running around, and Davidge talks about how the baby zombies grows at a substantially faster rate, and so now he's raising this baby, and they show right away that he's got to figure out how to feed this baby and take care of this baby. And one of the things they make apparent right away is that zombies notices the difference between them. He notices that he doesn't have 5 fingers, and obviously his skin is different, and all that. He's just very different, you know. And he says he wants to be like his uncle. That's how he refers to Davidge, as his uncle. And Davidge is like, man, there's nothing wrong with you. You know, you're a beautiful kid and all that. And he starts asking about his dad, and but you know, as a kid, kids are curious and they want to know things. And one of the things that Davidge always is telling the kid, zombies, is like, hey, don't go to this area where he found the skeleton or whatever. And at one point in the movie, he actually sees a starship, some kind of ship hovering over the planet, going somewhere else, and he goes to follow that wherever that is. He ends up being this like mining thing, and he sees that they have Drac slaves, workforce, or whatever, you know. And so he tells zombies, hey man, don't go over there. And zombie says, you know, like, you can tell, like, he keeps asking, like, is this maybe they're just friends, maybe they asked him to come work, and he's like, yeah, no, don't go there. um but there's some other good scenes where, you know, he's showing zombies how to play football and things like that, and they're really well done. I'm not a huge fan of Dennis Quaid. I think I don't think he's a horrible actor, but I personally think this is probably the best movie that he's ever been in, and it's probably the best acting that he's done. Maybe that's not fair to say because I've never seen, you know, every movie that he's ever been in. Um, but he's, I would say, a very blasé actor. You know, very he just kind of blends in. Maybe there's nothing really special about him. And in here, he's very sincere with uh, Jerry. His hatred of Jerry in the beginning is very well done, and then he seems very genuine about um, zombies and his love and his care for this kid. So anyway, one day he comes home, and from whatever he's doing, I don't know, maybe he's hunting or something like that. He comes home and Zombies is gone, and he pretty much knows where he's going because Zombies keeps asking about the humans or whatever. And so he goes there, and he ends up getting caught by a couple of these miners, and you know, they make him as sick and sadistic as you would believe, and they're kind of toying with him or whatever. And Zombies ends up scratching the one guy in the face, and of course that pisses him off, and he's about to take his revenge on him or whatever. The brother, somebody's gonna help him. He's gonna like raise his shotgun to do it, and just as he's about to do that, Davidge ends up killing him, and then he goes to shoot at the other guy with his homemade bow and arrow, and Zombies gets in the way, and the guy gets a drop on him and shoots Davidge several times. So this is where the movie gets very convenient because here, you know, he's on this planet. Nobody's searching for them, or at least they've never shown anybody searching for him. Now he's dead, or appears dead. He's not moving or anything like that. And all of a sudden you see some searchlights. He talks about how he doesn't know how long he'd lay there. And the searchlights focusing on him, and the next thing you see is um, a spot out in space, and they're playing this funeral music, and these two guys are working, and they're just basically doing this automated kind of funeral service for all these people. I don't know if it's people dying because of the war or whatever, but I actually like the scene because it kind of shows you, I would think, maybe how it would actually be, where it's an automated or semi-automated funeral rites or whatever, you know, depending on your religion and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, he ends up waking up. He ends up going to get work done, and they fix him all up, and he looks up, and his old crew is there that he was fighting with in the beginning of the movie. And right away, he's like, I got to get back. He's all healed up, and there's a suggestion by some guy that he might have been cavorting with the enemy or whatever. They don't really explore any of that, but he goes to steal the ship, and he has to blast his way through the doors, and immediately goes back down to the planet to go rescue zombies. Obviously, he's shaved. He looks like he's a brand new man. You see two ships follow him, make it down to the planet as well, and he gets down there, and they have their little boss fight, which is surprisingly gory. Um, like you see some guy get like just destroyed in a screw, like a big auger. One guy gets basically boiled alive in like molten rock or molten steel or something like that. There's a couple other ones. I think there's like um, some guy like picks up an ear out of the construction thing or something like that. So in the end, of course, he ends up getting zombies who's like unconscious. He's not doing well, and he wakes him up, and he finally comes up, and he tells Dennis Quaid's uncle that because he's all shaven now and his hair is short again, and he's only used to seeing with a beard, and he tells him how he looks terrible. It's pretty cute, and but they kind of go into this narration where uh, Davich actually takes him back to his home planet, and in its own time, they say something like, in its own time, Zombies has his own kid, and they read the lineage, and Willis Davidge is added to the line of Jariba. So the lineage, Davidge is added to the lineage of Jerry, which is really cool because obviously they bridged the gulf. You had two guys who freaking hated each other, and and the one guy who really was the one that had because we're looking at it from our perspective. We identify, we're the humans, right? So it makes sense for us to see it from his view. But he bridges the gulf, and he raises this alien's baby, so much so he risks his entire career to go rescue this child, and then he ends up on the home planet of his enemy, added to this guy's lineage. It's pretty cool. So there's one interesting thing that it's interesting to think about when you think about a movie like this. Why could you not make it? Or maybe you could, but I think it would be seen in a different way. Could you make a movie where the human, the alien is the vicious killer and is unreasonable, kind of like Davidge is in the beginning, and let's make the guy a Catholic, okay, and he's gonna teach Jerry about his religion. How do you think that would go over? Yeah, it wouldn't go over well, I don't think. I think it would be interesting to do a story like that because why would it be any worse for him to want to share his lineage, or why would it be any worse for him to do it that way? But I think especially now, I don't think too many people would have gave a shit back in 1985 when this movie was made. But now they would say, "Oh yeah, there you go, white savior and all that crap," or he's a colonizer or some shit like that. It's interesting to think about. If you would reverse the roles like that, though, how would people view that? So, anyway, this is a good movie. It definitely has its flaws, but the performances are fantastic, including the child actor in this. Whoever the kid is, that you can look it up in the credits. He's fantastic. I love the special effects, even though they definitely don't hold up to spaceship models and things like that. They're very like the way they fly in it is very not mechanical. I don't know, too precise. Let's say you'll see if you watch the movie. But I like how space is done. It's not like boring blackness. It looks very much like the nothing in the Neverending Story. The mats in the movie are beautiful. I just really like how the movie is done. And like I said, the main thing about it for me is the performances and how they end up meeting in the middle. The best part about any movie is the human, maybe not in this movie because there's an alien involved. But how do they get from point A to point B? And I think this is one of those movies that does a good job of it. In my opinion, a lot of the movies that show this now, or a lot of the TV episodes like Star Trek where they show Geordi and a Romulan together, they're all ripping off Enemy Mine. So, not that they don't do it well. I like seeing variations. In fact, I enjoy these episodes where they do show this. So, Anyway, watch Enemy Mine. Let me know if you like it, if you think it sucks, about what I said about if you reverse the roles and the religious, if he was all into his religion, teaching him Catholicism or whatever religion he might believe in. And like and subscribe and ring the bell and all that stuff so I can grow this channel. And join me next time when I review whatever the hell film I'm going to review next time. Thanks for sticking with me.